Hi, friends. What is the tree of knowledge of good and evil? You ever wondered that? And maybe you already know that. But do we understand the significance of that and what it says to our lives, not at the beginning of creation, certainly that, but also what does it say to our lives today? What does that mean for us today? Is the story of Adam and Eve even relevant to us today? Absolutely. So, yeah, Adam and Eve. Real people? Definitely. Definitely. Somewhere along the line in the creation of humanity, God breathes into a man and a woman his breath, and that's what makes us distinctive from all other living creatures then and now. As we have a soul, and it's immortal, like it or not, it's going to live on. We're going to live on. And in Jesus Christ, we're taught not just soul, but body and soul for eternity, either with God or without Him, either fulfilled and 10,000 times better life will be in the life of heaven than we could ever imagine it or experience it here now, or 10,000 times worse than our worst day on earth. You know? And all of that is deeply connected to the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So here's the deal. God has given us so much in this world. And we get a sense of that in the story of Adam and Eve in the garden that God had given us, Eden. So much of what God has given us in this world is gift. And it's not a gift unto itself, it's a gift for us. For us. Like, we are so special among all the creatures of God that He has given us everything in this world. Now, not everything to own for ourselves, but everything to be steward of. So He's the owner, including, get ready for this, He owns you. You don't own your body. You don't own your mind. You don't own your soul. And you never will. But yet, so many of us are living our lives as if we own ourselves. And we say that. I own my body. Don't tell me what to do with my body. You know, I own my own mind. Don't tell me what to think. You know, even when it comes to thinking about God or receiving His word and pondering it and meditating upon it and applying it to our lives. Don't push your doctrine on me, even when it's the truth that sets us free. Right? Yeah, so that's a lie. And we know that from the Bible, but we also know that by the way that we live our lives. And I want to get to that in a second. So all that God has given us in this good earth, and it is good, was meant for us to be stewards of for three reasons. To use all that's available to us, including our bodies, our minds, our souls, our life, breath, and plant life, and water, and earth to till and to grow food, and everything, fish of the sea, birds of the air, all four, so that we might, through it all, see the Creator and the creature. We might fall more in love with God along those lines. So see God and love God. Draw closer to Him. That's all one thing. But also so that in all of that, we might be able to get ourselves to heaven only through Jesus Christ. And that we might help others. Another way of saying it is that God has given us all of this to use or not to use well or not to use, because we do have freedom, even though we don't have ownership, in order to know God in this world, love God in this world, and serve God in this world. Again, another way of saying it is so that we might be with Him forever in heaven, and help as many people along the way by all that we do with what God has given us, glorify Him, and people seeing that glory through us and the use of our life might also want to follow God. That's why we're in this world. And that's why we've been given this world. But is that the way we're living in this world? I think the answer is a resounding no. And that's where the knowledge of the tree of knowledge of good and evil comes in. So what does this mean? Well, we know what good is. And we know that ultimately, the ultimate good is God Himself. He's the greatest good. And all good is, again, meant to draw us to the good, who is God, and share that good, who is God, and all that flows from God for the good of others, so that with them together we might journey to the good, return to the good, who created us good, and wants all of our good, which is possible in the life of heaven. So that's a sense of the good. Okay, what's evil? Evil is simply this. It's the absence of the good. And take that out, blow it up exponentially. Evil is the absence of the good, of the greatest good. Evil, then, is the absence of God and all that flows from God. That's what evil is. And what God had said to humanity when He offers us everything, to be used for the purposes that I just described. He just says, but here's the thing. What I don't want you ever to do is to eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. That's all. I just don't want you to eat of that tree. What does He mean there? He only wants the good. He doesn't want us to have experiences of evil. And that's what the tree symbolizes. Is I don't want you to take a bite of the apple, the proverbial fruit of knowledge of good and evil, but only of the good that I offer you. And He says, the moment you eat from it, you shall surely be doomed to die. I want to get back to that one. Anytime then, this is what it means for us today. Anytime that we choose an experience of anything other than the great good that God offers us, we are choosing evil. And it's many various forms. For a lesser evil, a greater evil, we're choosing something other than God. And then therefore we're choosing something that is deprived of the great good God. That is a deprivation of that. That is an absence of God. And here's something to really ponder. We can even choose a good that's lesser than God, and it can be an evil. What do I mean by that? Good, but not good for us. Like when two people are in a relationship and they choose the good of human love expressed in a physical way, but not in a way that God called us to be with one another, outside the absence of how God ordained us to be with one another. And it could be good, sexual love is good, but it's outside of the good that God offers us. And so it can actually be bad for us when taken out of the context in which God calls us and how God calls us to love one another. And how God calls us to love Him first in His love before the love of another, and never have the love of another be seen as a greater good than God's love. It can bring about an evil in our lives, Ultimately, again, the absence of the greatest good, who is God, but then has reverberating effects across our lives, across that relationship, across the relationship with others, and that carries forward into marriage, where we ultimately have made a position and taken a stand and chosen a lifestyle and relationship where we basically said to our spouse, and our spouse has said to us, listen, I love you more than God. I choose you and our ways together over God and his ways. That is not a good entrance into a relationship that any person who's in love with another person says, this is the most important relationship in my life as a human being. That's not the way into a relationship. And that's what it means then to take a bite out of the tree of knowledge and good and evil. And when we do that, God is saying to us that the moment we eat from it, you are surely doomed to die. What does he mean by that? What I don't think he means here is that we're surely doomed to die at that moment physically. But at that moment, and the moments that follow that, and there are many moments now available to us in our life where we're just constantly, continuously choosing the good of other things, activities, engagements, pleasures, pursuits, hobbies, a way of life, people, relationships, substances, right? Ourselves, more than God, or displacing or usurping God, or more important than God. The moment that we do those, the moments that we're doing that, is contributing to our spiritual death. Because you stack all those up against one another, and ultimately we're all going to die physically. Then by the way that we live our lives, we are showing God who we want to be with for eternity. That we want to be with other things and other people, and to spend our time in general more with other stuff than with God. And God, in giving us our freedom, will give us what we choose in our freedom. Not him, and everything else that is not him. And that is hell. It is the absence of God. And it is death, but it is an endless death. And it's not just our souls. It'll be our bodies and our minds for all of eternity regretting that we chose something. We chose a life absent of him. I'm not talking about absence of love of him. I'm not talking absence of sitting in a pew because of him. I'm not talking about absence of worshiping him. I'm talking about you can have all those things and still choose everything else and count it more than him when you stack up your life. Or we can do what our first parents were not doing, chose not to do, in their freedom decided not to do, but one among us did do. God himself joining our humanity, becoming man in Jesus Christ. And we choose to follow him, which redeems us, which restores us, which brings us back into the life of God, and is capable of giving us the grace. We always have our freedom. And then with our freedom, choosing that grace to choose God above everything else. And when we do that, then we have the possibility through Christ of living an immortal life. We'll always live an immortal life, with or without God, of living an immortal life with God forever. And when we do that, life with him will be so much more than the best day that we've had here on earth, times a million, times a billion. And yet we grasp for all those best days here above and beyond him. And again, hear me when I say this. We as Christians can do this. I'm not talking about agnostics and atheists alone. I'm not talking about hedonists alone. I'm talking about normal Christians. We are capable of taking a bite of that same apple, of that same proverbial fruit, of choosing to live a life where we know both good and evil. That's something that God never wanted for us, because he knew that if we build a life upon that, then there would be our decision, and there would be our eternity. And the devil gets this. You know, I've been talking to you about this from Genesis 2, but just a little later on, when the devil comes on the scene, he says to Adam and Eve, and he says this to us countless times a day, what did God say to you? That you're going to die? Surely you will not die. And you know, God, the devil takes the truths of God, and he doesn't dismiss the whole truth. All he does is just twist it. He'll take love, for instance, and he doesn't dismiss love. He twists it into lust, right? And he doesn't take this truth about that you're going to die if you choose evil. He's saying, true, you will not die, meaning you will not die now. He twists it. But he knows that you will die for all of eternity, living in that forever regret, knowing that you could have chosen God, and you didn't. That forever misery of being an eternity absent of God. And so he says, surely you will not die now. But in fact, you'll become like gods. And that's true. Again, he twisted. Because we, like God, will know the difference between good and evil. But who wants to know the difference between good and evil here and now in experiences, let alone living forever in the consequences of knowing the difference between good and evil and choosing the absence of God in our life? And yet, how much and how often do we race after the goods of this world? Goods! They're good. But we race after them with such intensity and such desperation and such habit that we choose all these lesser goods over the greatest good. And this is the part that this should just blow our minds. Is that when we choose God and the greatest good, we get all the other goods besides. But when we choose everything else as a good, and there are many goods in this world, before God, then we really don't even get them because we don't possess them. We don't own them. And we won't have them in eternity. Eternity in heaven is absent of all the goods of God, not just God. It is ultimate separatedness. But when we choose them, all the goods of this world other than God, then not only do we not get the goods of this world and eternity, we don't get the greatest good either. But, when we choose God in all of his goodness, knowing that we're stewards of this world, we know what to do with the things of this world and the people of this world and our life breath and a heart that beats and a soul capable of loving. And we will get so much of the goods of this world and enjoy all the goods of this world. But first God, and from them, we will forever cherish and be able to appreciate all that God offers us, benefit from it, and share it generously with so many others. And then all the reasons why God has given us the goods of this earth will be accomplished. They will be the means with Jesus Christ by which we come to know God more, love God more, and serve God more, and bring as many people along with us to be happy with him forever in the world to come. And all of that teeters on the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and what we choose and what we don't choose first. Until next time, friends,